Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Braun, and I am an insurance professor at the University of St. Gallen. It is my pleasure to be able to speak at the 14th Global Insurance Symposium of the Korea Insurance Research Institute. My talk will be about InsurTech, about its historical development, recent trends that we see, and I'm going to attempt an outlook to basically assess where things will be going from where we currently stand. So let me begin my presentation by sharing the slides. So InsurTech is a topic that dates back to the years 2016, 2017, because before that time, there was not really such a thing as a term InsurTech. So you can see that here on the slide with the Google Trend search that before 2016, the term InsurTech was not coined. So it's a completely new term, if you want, and it describes this fast-growing and fast-moving sector of startups that inject technology into the insurance industry to basically improve on customer experience, to improve on processes, to cut costs, to automate and essentially ensure that the industry takes the next step in terms of digital transformation. In the early days, as you can see here on the slide, the topic was mainly discussed from the perspective of a threat. So the insurance industry, in particular, the old insurance companies, so-called incumbents, were seeing startups coming into the industry as a threat that could, as one said, potentially disrupt the whole market, disrupt the whole industry, and turn insurance into a business that is completely different from what we've seen before. So as we all know today, disruption has not taken place yet. And in a study in 2017, we sort of predicted that it would go this way based on what we were observing and based on a deep analysis of the sector at the time. And I will shed some more light on this phenomenon as we go along in the talk. So what has grown, though, over time is the funding. As you can see here, funding rounds have gotten larger and larger, and the overall funding volume increased. So it's very interesting to see that venture capitalists, but also other types of investors are basically exhibiting a big interest in this InsurTech sector, are really interested in putting capital to work in this area because there is the view, obviously, that a lot of innovation is taking place. And it's easy to grasp the idea behind that. The insurance industry was a late bloomer in terms of digital transformation at the time when InsurTech took off. So there were a lot of opportunities to be seized. And this is why a lot of capital has been pouring into the sector to fuel the expansion of InsurTech startups over time. And the trend is intact. So these are just figures for the first half of the current year, 2021. So we expect to end the year with an even higher figure in terms of both the investment amount and the number of deals that have been conducted. A very interesting perspective on the topic, and I think one that should be stressed, is that it's not only venture capital funds that invest in InsurTech, it's particularly also insurance companies themselves, so incumbents, insurance companies and reinsurance companies. And the volumes that have been invested by these companies have been growing throughout the second half of the 2010s and have been a little bit decreasing in 2020. So 2021 is still running. We still have some time to go here. But the general idea is really important to emphasize. What is the idea behind this? Why are incumbent insurance companies really taking their own capital and investing it into the InsurTech sector? Well, what has been realized is that it is easier to conduct certain more radical innovation projects off balance sheet than on balance sheet. So due to what we would call the organizational immune system, so the way traditional large corporations are structured, it is more difficult to be innovative in that area, in that sort of framework that you have, than to simply do it off balance sheet in a new company, in a small insurtech firm that has all the advantages at hand to come up with more radical innovations compared to what we know from the classical industry. And if you look at the history of insurance over time, it's pretty clear that our industry has been innovative when it comes to product innovations, also process innovations, but very little business model innovation. So the insurance company business model as we know it today has been existing for over 150 years in many developed countries. So the business model itself remains intact, but it has not been innovated at all over a very long period of time. And to do such things as business model innovation, it's really important to do that off balance sheet. And that's not a totally new idea from the insurance industry. It has long been performed in other industries before. One example is BMW, the big car manufacturer, that is by itself a very innovative company, puts out a lot of patents, has the best engineers worldwide, come to Munich, but they have something called the startup garage, which they use also to particularly pick startup companies around the world to partner up with them for innovation, because they realized that even the best engineers in the world will not be able to basically deliver the same innovative power as if you are able to tap into a global landscape of startups, that are basically developing new concepts, new business models in different areas. For example, in the car industry, or here for us in the insurance industry. But why do insurtech firms, or why do startups in general have an edge at innovation? So this is something that we discussed in a study in 2017. And I just want to highlight a few points that make startups different from insurance companies, from incumbents, and give them an advantage when it comes to more radical types of innovation projects. So one thing is tolerance for failure. So we are established insurance companies with a long-standing history, with a lot of reputation, and we're worried about the risk of, losing the reputation if we fail. So we have very low tolerance for failure. We do not have an error culture, a failure culture that says, try to be innovative. If it doesn't work out, come back and stand up. Insurtech startups do have that. So they're really experimental in the sense what they are trying to do, and they have a much higher tolerance for failure. They have a much shorter employee tenure, so tendency to employ younger people with less of an history, which makes it easier for them to think out of the box. So there's a psychological theory to that actually says that the longer you have been doing something, the more experienced you become in that thing, but it's very difficult to think out of the box. It's very difficult to leave the old paths and to think about new paths to pursue. They have cutting edge technology, so no legacy technology problem like what we do have in the insurance industry. Maybe some other things. They try to come up with minimum viable products. So very simple standardized products that just work without bells and whistles, whereas product development cycles in the insurance industry for incumbents take a very long time. So sometimes it takes us 10 months or even more to bring a new product to market maturity, to be able to sell a new product in the market. And insurtech startups are much faster, and they experiment. And as soon as they realize a product doesn't work the way it should, they're quick to react and readjust. They are much quicker in terms of decision making, so flat hierarchies, not so many people that you need to get a sign off from, other things. So company culture is more progressive. So I think this has to do with the entrepreneurial spirit that is present in small and young companies, and tends to disappear a little bit if the company grows very large. Then it becomes more conservative. So all these are examples for traits, if you want, characteristics of insurtech firms that give them an edge in terms of innovation, and that are really important to bear in mind when it comes to the assessment of the relationship, as we'll do in a few minutes, between the incumbents, us, and the newcomers, if you want, the insurtech startups. But before we do that, before we look a little bit deeper at the potential, relationship between incumbents and insurtechs, One very important thing is to look at where the music has been playing, in the sense where most of the activity in InsurTech has been taking place along the industry risk to capital chain. So what the insurance industry traditionally has been doing is, certain risks that are residing with individuals or firms are connected through insurers and reinsurers with capital that comes from the capital market. So risks are being backed with capital through the insurance industry and reinsurance industry, which acts as a conduit. So what has been done in terms of InsurTech? So if you start that risk to capital value chain of the industry on the left side, where the original risk bearers are, we have a lot of InsurTech firms that have made the risk more accessible. So basically, it's possible to measure the risk more in detail and to create a lot of data that can then be used by insurance companies to handle the risk, to manage the risk. So take TrueMotion, for example, which is a firm specializing in telematics devices that basically make the risk of crashing a car more measurable. You have Withings, a company specializes in health solutions that sells smart watches that measure your vitality functions. Dakadu is doing a similar thing and is then additionally creating an index of health and well-being for each individual that can be used by, for example, health or life insurance companies to create new products on top of that, or to add services. And you have Nest, that is has in the meantime been purchased by Google and is a company that focuses on smart home technology. Is a very important feature in property casualty insurance going forward. Then we have a lot of firms that focus on distribution channels. On the one side, technology providers that provide, communication technology or digital technologies for selling products for the actual distribution and sales process. But on the other hand, we have firms that are distribution channels themselves. So in that sense, they basically compete with traditional distribution channels such as brokers or tied agents. WeFox is a very famous example from Europe, one of the largest and most important insurtech startups here in Europe, most successful as well, has been growing very fast over the last years. And it's essentially running a business model where it helps traditional brokers to digitize their business, but at the same time onboards their clients on its platform and therefore becomes an own digital distribution channel for the insurance industry. We have a lot of additional startups, insurtech startups that have targeted the primary insurance level in this value chain, in this risk to capital chain. So startups like Lemonade that everyone would probably know, or Hippo, or One or Koya Insurance, that are true risk carriers, primary insurance firms that have been founded, started from scratch, and that are competing against the traditional primary insurance firms and are trying to offer their own customers a better customer experience, better products, and potentially other benefits that are being derived from their purely digital standpoint, which they adopted. We also have a lot of startups in the insurtech space that are basically focusing on the improvement of the value chain, on the digital transformation of the value chain of the incumbents. So companies such as Casco or Friss or even Backbase that are offering systems that can be used to automate and to digitize the value chain of the incumbents. Now, an interesting thing to observe, if you look at it this way, if you look at the insurtech sector this way along the industry's risk to capital chain, then you would observe that not much has been happening at the back end. Right? So there are not many firms that are offering software or hardware for reinsurance companies and reinsurance brokers, and there are not many startups that are competing directly against reinsurance firms. The reason is pretty simple. The reinsurance business model as a global model with a lot of diversification is much harder to attack than the primary business model, which in some cases is more regionally focused, or it can be started with a regional focus. Whereas reinsurance is a very, very capital intensive business. You need a large balance sheet to be able to underwrite major risks around the world, such as natural disaster risk, for example, and that's very difficult to do for startups. Another really interesting development, though, is that reinsurance firms themselves have seized the opportunity of these firms popping up here and becoming new distribution channels, so that reinsurers, by partnering directly with different insurtech firms that do the distribution, have now gotten access to primary insurance risk, bypassing the primary insurers that are sitting in between them and the distribution channels. So traditionally, reinsurers did not have access to primary insurance risk unless they had a primary insurance subsidiary in the group. And nowadays, they're using a lot the insurtech sector to experiment with access to primary insurance risk. Munich Re and Slice is one example. Swiss Re has founded its own tech firm called ETQ, which basically delivers primary insurance risk into the Swiss Re balance sheet. So this is an interesting development that needs to be focused on going forward to see where we will be going. What we have done in a 2017 study is to make sense of this whole sector. We have developed a categorization tool, if you want, and a tool that allows you to screen the anatomy of different business models that are prevailing in the insurtech sector. Because looking at the startups and all their fancy logos and names, it is very hard to assess what they are really doing. And it's really hard to get an overview of what the market has to offer, which is why we did an in-depth analysis at the time, and we came up with 9 categories of insurtech firms that I would like to briefly present to you. So the first one are comparison portals, and I think that's nothing new. Some people call them aggregators. Those are websites that bundle the demand of insurance clients and then basically allow insurance companies to sell products through that website to customers. And they allow customers to conduct a comparison of different insurance products so that they can pick the one that they feel is the most adequate and the cheapest for them. That is not necessarily something that has started in the last 5 or 6 years, but it is traditionally it's being counted under insurtech as well. Although when it started, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the term insurtech didn't yet exist. Then you have digital broker firms. Those were the first wave of insurtech firms providing an app that allows you to register all your products that you have with different insurance companies, with the long-term goal of being able to spot coverage gaps and through automated advice to the customer, actually allow customers to change policies from one provider to another, and to have everything at their glance when it comes to their insurance coverage. A lot of these firms have not been successful in the first run, so they have pivoted, they have changed their business model, such as WeFox, for example, has changed to become more broker focused, in the sense that they're also providing software to brokers, and they now have a digital insurance carrier called One. So they have pivoted their business model. Others like Knip, which was a famous startup here in Central Europe, and particularly the German-speaking part, has disappeared. So ultimately, the pure digital broker model was not successful until now, but that doesn't have to be the case in the future. We have embedded insurance. It's another category of startups that focuses on the digital customer journey and tries to embed, things in a web shop, possibilities to sell insurance through web shops, Amazon or other online retailers, so that the customer can purchase insurance coverage at the point of sale in that moment when he or she recognizes the need of insurance most. We have peer-to-peer insurance that are essentially a digital form of mutual insurance that provide kickbacks to the customers in case at the end of the year some unclaimed premium is left in the company. They give that back to their customers. Preinsurance in Germany is a famous example, and that works very well. But it's essentially taking the mutual insurance model into the digital world. And we have on-demand insurance firms like Links in Switzerland that allow you to swipe on and off your phone to activate coverage by the minute or by the day, and then turn it off again if you feel that you don't need it at the time. So it's usage based, insurance, if you want. Then we have the digital carriers that I already mentioned on the previous slide, firms that are competing against traditional insurance firms on a purely digital basis. And we have three categories at the bottom that are essentially technology providers. A lot of firms are basically concentrated in these buckets. Those guys try to provide technology to traditional insurance firms to help them automate their value chain, digitally transform their value chain, become better at the customer experience and all these kinds of things. In these boxes, in the white boxes, you see business model patterns of our St. Gallen Business Model Navigator, which is a famous book that has been published by my colleagues here at the university. It analyzes successful business model patterns across time and industries. And we have basically in our study, basically determined which business model patterns are inherent in these different insurtech categories. And for those of you who are interested in further reading, you can go to the St. Gallen Business Model Navigator and you will find the patterns there. Now, what is the incumbent's perspective? So our perspective as an established industry or established companies on insurtechs. There are three different roles that insurtechs can play. One is enablers. And as you can see down here, 70 to 80% of the startups are in this category. So they are really there to help you digitize your own business. You have to see them as potential partners, or you can be the customer of those firms and use whatever they have to offer to become better at your own play, at your own game, and to be relevant to the customer going forward in the digital world. The second category are competitors. And I've already mentioned them on two previous slides, those firms that directly target either firms like brokers that are a distribution channel, or that target primary insurance carriers directly and try to take away market share from those. By a simple estimate, those are no more than 10 to 20% of the firms. So a lot more firms are actually enablers or technology providers. A lot less of the insurtechs are really firms that are trying to compete, but nevertheless, they are there, they are growing, and they are really quick in terms of innovations, and they are all already exhibiting a high degree of automation of their value chain, so they would be able to offer their products at lower costs going forward, which is why we have to take them seriously from the perspective of the incumbents. And the final category are disruptors. I mentioned it on the introductory slides. Disruption is not taking place. By any means, we think that it will not take place in the next years because the number of startups that pursue a truly disruptive business model, such as disintermediation of the value chain, or such as prevention to an extent where insurance will no longer be necessary because you can just tackle the risk through technological prevention. We think that we're still far away from a market disruption there. And therefore, the correct strategy here is to monitor those and to be prepared if, for example, a prevention business model is going to take off or a disintermediation business model is going to take off to an extent where it could become a threat going forward. In a survey that we did back when we published our big study, this was basically mirrored. So here, a lot of the primary insurers, reinsurers, and brokers that we asked how they would like to deal with the upcoming insurtech sector actually said we want to cooperate. You can see that here, cooperation, with 5 being the highest value you could answer, cooperation was really what most of the firms that we asked were trying to pursue. And given what I've just presented to you, this makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of value to be created in a cooperation or collaboration between an insurtech startup that has an innovative approach and an incumbent with the capital, the brand, and the balance sheet that it has to offer. And insurtechs, on the other hand, said the same thing when we asked them, right? Most of the insurtechs, you can see the yellow painted bars, said that we actually want to be a cooperation or collaboration partner of the industry. We're not a competitive model. We want to help insurers to digitize and digitally transform their own business and to take it to the next level. And now if you look at the insurance value chain in a sense of a classical company value chain, cooperation opportunities arise along all steps now because the insurtech sector has expanded along the whole insurance value chain, and you will find specialized startup firms that offer very interesting solutions in all steps of the value chain, such as distribution. We already discussed about that, but particularly also now underwriting and claims. A lot of automation is going on in these areas. Friss is an interesting company that offers fraud detection software. Claimsforce, company from Hamburg in Germany that helps you automating your claims process, saving costs there, becoming more operationally excellent, and so forth. And then obviously also, back end with operations and technology, a lot of providers of artificial intelligence systems that can be used for data analytics in all parts of the business. And I think it's very worthwhile to actually look at these firms and try to establish relationships and partnerships to be able to successfully transform your incumbent business and your own value chain and to make it ready for the digital age. One thing that I would like to stress, sort of approaching the end of the presentation, is something that tends to be overlooked when we talk about insurtech, and that is there is a competition going on even with the insurtech firms that are not focusing on taking away market share from you as an incumbent, because these guys are competing for the same talent with you. And they're competing for the same talent with you as are the big tech firms such as Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and others, and as are transformed incumbents such as Ping An, which I've taken here as an example, and further incumbents that are following. We know a lot of the market leaders around the world in the insurance industry are quickly digitally transforming now and are launching new business models, are automating their value chains. And so these transformed incumbents will be competing for the same talent, the big tech and also the insurtech firms. So in Europe, we have had several media reports saying that high-ranking executives from established incumbent firms have left the insurance company and have joined an insurtech startup firm, such as WeFox, for example. Across the Atlantic in the US, a lot of insurance executives have joined Lemonade, for example. So there is a competition going on between insurtech and incumbents, which is not focused on the product market where you sell your policies. It's focused on the labor market where you're trying to get that talent that you desperately need to digitize your own business. And I think that is something that needs to be taken into account going forward. So for us as incumbents, we need to work on our corporate culture and our innovative mindset and be able to offer these talents an interesting and attractive workplace that compares to what they find at insurtechs. So this is confirmed by evidence we have from talking to our own students. If we speak to our graduate students and undergraduate students and ask them what they would like to do, work in an insurance industry or work for a tech firm or work for a startup, then they usually would say tech firm or startup, because they feel that it is more innovative, more attractive. They can feel it more, the spark coming over to them. So this is something that we really need to bear in mind as incumbents. And that brings me to the last slide to wrap it all up. So we had this insurtech hype in the years 2016, 17, and 18, where everyone was talking disruption. And the reason was that the insurance industry was a late bloomer. We started really late in terms of digital transformation. And we were threatened, or we felt threatened, by the quickly growing insurtech sector. I think today we can basically say that the insurtech sector has not disrupted us. It has been a catalyst for innovation. It has given us that final push to start on a broader scale innovation projects that are very important in the age of digital transformation. And I think what I've tried to highlight throughout the presentation is the opportunities for value creation by collaborating with insurtech startups are huge, are very extensive for incumbents and should be seized. And I think this is what is going to even further happen if we look down the line, throughout the next years. I think the collaboration projects are going to intensify, and what we are going to experience is a diffusion of talent and ideas and capital and resources between insurtech and incumbents for the greater good of the industry, because I truly believe that the industry will successfully, in many cases, successfully transform into the digital age and seize all the opportunities that are basically there, using the help of insurtech and basically also withstanding the competition of those firms that are trying to become digital competitors. With that, I would like to end the presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I wish you a great conference. Thank you. Bye-bye.